Hi, my name is Maruchi Fang from Drawn to Health, and welcome back to the course. In this video, we're going to be talking about all kinds of transport and, yeah, basically what best to choose. So let's get started. If this thing wants to cooperate, there you go. So, what kinds of transport can you choose? We're going to be talking about what kinds there are, choosing what fits your needs, thinking about costs, and familiarizing yourself with your environment. So let's start with the first one. What kinds are there? Well, you're probably familiar with a lot of them. There's the car or the bike. Like a motorcycle. You could go on the bicycle or like a small scooter because those are functionally the same. You could take the bus. You could take a train or the metro or a tram, depending on if your city has that. Or you could walk. That's also a mode of transport. Um, the most intensive ones for your body, probably, although bicycling can also be pretty intensive. But we're talking about going to your job. So, choosing what fits your needs. If you're someone who, for example, if you live an hour away from your job, it's pretty logical that you wouldn't go on your bicycle or you wouldn't walk there. Um, However, all the other options we just talked about are open. So you could take the bus, the train, the metro, or the car slash motorcycle. You could do all that. However, choosing what fits your needs also, for example, if you do want to take the motorcycle, for example, is it okay if it rains? Is it okay that because you don't have coverage on your motorcycle, so could you do that? Is that okay? Um, if you need um, if you need your own personal mode of transport, sure you can take a car, but perhaps you need just a way to get from point A to point B, and the rest you can walk. Then maybe it's best to consider a bus or a train or a metro or tram. Again, that depends if you have it in your city. So that's what we talk about when we're speaking of choosing what fits your needs. If you, for example, most people are pretty content with just, taking the train because they can just sit there and do their own thing while moving to their job. Some people actually really like that. They need the rest to kind of like get themselves into the mood of working. So for some people, that's actually a need. For others, it might not be as necessary, so they opt to go with a car. Um, so yeah, what do you need in terms of transport? Not just from to get from point A to point B, but also what is most comfortable for you. If you get stressed out because of driving, maybe it would be best for you to not go with a car but take the train or the bus. You know, it's not just a physical need, but also a little bit of a mental need. So that's also important to keep in mind. Um, Now, costs. All modes of transport, except for walking and a bicycle, cost money. Almost all of them do. Um, Even if you carpool, someone's going to have to pay for the gas. You know, transport always costs something. So it's always good to compare side by side what would be best for you to choose. If, for example, um, if you can go to your work with both the car and the bus, let's just take those two. It's always good to check how much it would cost you to go to your work with both of them. Now, your car uses gas, so you'd have to pay gas money. Gas money is always, a little bit of a tricky subject because gas prices tend to change a little bit over time. So, but they usually stay within the same range for quite a while. Um, I think 160 or 150 in our country at least. That's sort of where it's at right now. So 155, I guess, as an average. You could take that and calculate the cost of how much it would cost you per day, because that's usually the best thing is to just look at it per day, how much it will cost you. Um, then you would, well, we would take as an example the bus. The bus has, at least in our country, there's two ways of taking the bus. You could take the bus by just individual, you know, cash them as individual trips, or you could take a subscription. And basically, what that is you buy a card that will let you get on to the bus for like, I think it's a month. Every month you can do this. Um, they charge you a set fee, and then from that fee you can travel to and from whenever you want. I think at least 2 times a day or something like that. But there's a subscription fee that you can pay, and it's usually the much cheaper option instead of just going for the individual ticket option. So in our case, we would have to like put those two side by side and look at it for the day value, because that's usually, you don't, if you are sick one day, you don't use that money. Um, Although in the case of the subscriptions, you do. You're paying a set fee, so that money's lost no matter what. So there's a lot of variables that um, you need to think about before you start to just getting any kind of transport. So it's good to know how much it will cost you. You can always try and reduce your costs. For example, you could, if possible, you could walk. Again, if possible, because as I said before, if you live an hour from your work, yeah, walking's not going to be it. That's not going to happen. At least I don't. You'd have to be very persistent and very dedicated to your job to be willing to walk for an hour. Most people would not do that, I think, but it's a possibility. You could also use the bicycle, again, if possible. I have heard of some acquaintances that have actually gone with a bicycle for an hour to their work. Me myself, I wouldn't do that. That's a little bit too much, and I would not like being at my work and then just feeling kind of like clammy, sweaty because you're exercising, so you sweat a little bit. Um, and that also that's this kind of ties into choosing what fits your needs. If your work environment is one that requires you to have a certain level of hygiene and presentability, going with a bicycle may many times not be a good idea because you're exercising um, while getting to your job, so it might not be a good idea. But if it's just like it's for 15 minutes, then you're probably fine. But you need to check how much. For example, if you're someone who sweats with just a little bit of exercise, you might not want to choose the bicycle. But again, that's very much dependent on how you need to get to work, how you need to be at work. If you're someone who works at a construction company, I don't think they're going to mind much if you are a little bit sweaty. I don't think, at least. I'm not quite sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they might not mind that much. Um, so yeah, that's a good thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind cost-wise is there is such a thing as carpooling, for example, which might also be a cheap option, but then again, you'd have to have other people who are going to the same place, and it might not be very easy to manage that. But if you can, that might be the cheap option, and also it's in a car, so you're going to be nice and warm or nice and cool, depending on the weather, and not have any rain. And the only thing is you're in close quarters with some other people. I don't know if you mind. That's the thing. If you do mind, that might not be the transport type for you. Um, the last point is familiarize yourself with your environment. And with that, I mean, well, for example, I just said trams might not be in your city. not every city or village or town has the same kinds of transport. For example, I know that I'm just going to take Holland for example because that's where I live. I know that in Amsterdam there's trams that you can take them. They work just like buses, only they're I think more efficient. It was the eventual thing. I don't quite know why trams are a separate thing, but they're a thing, you know. So trams are in Amsterdam, and I think in other bigger cities. If I'm not mistaken, Nijmegen also has it, but I'm not quite sure. Um, so trams are an option, but for example, where I live, all the way in the east of the Netherlands, there are no trams, not where I live. So that is just not an option. Um, so I might be able to look at, the trams website. There, it's not going to be here. So my environment doesn't have it. Um, Another thing is, for example, I do not like bugs. I just don't like them. So, and I live here in a place where there's a lot of nature and a lot of, it's very pretty here, the environment. But that also means that if I go on a bicycle anywhere, I'm just going to have bugs all over me, and I don't like that. So that's also a thing to keep in mind. Do I want to do that? If I'm going into the city, there's not going to be any bugs, so I can just take the bicycle. It's fine. But if I'm going to go to the outskirts, I will usually choose the car, or well, I had a scooter, not anymore. Otherwise, I would do that. But I'd use the car because there's no bugs. There's nothing there, you know. So that's a thing to keep in mind. Also, if you live in a village that is just everything's very far apart, yeah, you might want to go with the car because it's easier um, to get everywhere. Or if you're more environmentally, you, how do you say that? Like if you're more concerned about the environment, you might choose a bicycle anyway. But it's just um, a good thing to keep in mind that not all cities, not all villages have the same kinds of transports. I think there's even some villages in the Netherlands that don't have trains at all. They don't have any kind of train coming in. That just there's no station. They do have buses, but no trains. So if you want to take a train to somewhere, you need to go into the next village with the bus and then take the train. So it's good to know what kind of what kind of transport is available in your place of residence and especially at your place of work. Because if, for example, where you work, if there's no bus station, yeah, it's not going to be a good idea to go with the bus, and you might need to think of something else. So those are all very good things to keep in mind. And I think I've told you pretty much enough about what kinds of transport uh, you're able to choose. Um, yeah, I think I've told you pretty much everything for this video. Um, yeah, so thank you very much for watching. The next video will be about uh, basically we'll be diving deeper into what kinds of transports there are and what the pros and cons of them are. So that's the subject of the next video. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.